Well, good morning, folks. This room is awfully dark. There's probably a rationale for it, given I heard the party at Manning's was late into the night, so I could see why having a dark room is really important. But once again, I want to really thank Patrick and really WIA for choosing New Orleans for having this conference and to really spend the time with us and the community to understand what our broadband challenges are, broadly speaking, but also trying to figure out ways that we could provide solutions to addressing some of these challenges. Again, my name is Veneeth Iyengar, and I am the first executive director for all things broadband in the state of Louisiana. And our broadband story really started in 2019 when Governor Edwards, through an executive order, created the Broadband for Everyone in Louisiana Commission. And before that commission could really get started, we all know what happened in March of 20. And so March of 20 happens, pandemic starts, and we had two then legislators, both coming from rural parts of the state, that recognized that in order to address the challenges that we're going to have with all things broadband, that there needed to be a concerted effort, a focused effort to addressing all things broadband. So two legislators came, partnered with the governor's office, created the Office of Broadband, and then in late 20, early part of 21, the governor and legislature said, hey, Veneeth, is this something you're willing to lead? So I've learned a lot about all things broadband. And what's amazing is the impact that it's having on lives, both materially, both professionally and personally. And so every day in our office of 3, so we are a public startup that's managing the challenges that 1.7 million Louisianians have, 42% of whom are Black and brown families. The challenges are large, right? And we hear everyday stories from people that fundamentally need access to high-speed, affordable, reliable internet. Why? To improve their lives both professionally and to improve their lives personally. And so our theory of change is, let's work like heck to work with that sense of urgency, to eliminate as many barriers as possible in Louisiana, to allow for internet service providers and to allow for co-ops in this case to apply for our federal funds and to diffuse that in the communities that need it the most. And so in Louisiana, between the different pots of federal money and between what we expect to receive from the infrastructure bill, you're gonna see close to $2 billion in investments that's gonna be made between now and the next 5 years. We're talking about committing these dollars and spending these dollars to do it over the next 5 years to affect change in 1.7 million people. It's not, and I've mentioned this publicly, it's not just good enough to invest, right? It's frankly a busted investment if we just get people access to something they need. It is critical upon our office and critical upon our efforts in Louisiana to also address issues around adoption, to address issues around digital skilling, and then also from the perspective of devices, how we can really develop a workforce for the future. And so a couple of things that are really important to our office and what our theory of change is in Louisiana is, look, we're gonna solve the functional need of getting everyone access to something they've never had. The key now and how we're thinking about achieving ubiquity when it comes to access to high-speed affordable internet, which is both on the mobility side and non-mobility side, is how do we address issues in which we can leverage broadband as a platform and an asset and as an enabler to drive incremental growth among farmers, right? We travel around the state, we have a pretty agrarian economy, especially in certain parts of the state, and as part of that effort, we've talked to farmers who have frankly benefited, and they have said unprompted, that they credit a Verizon tower that's on their property that's helped them reduce operating expenses, right? And so we see the power of stories. We see the power of what broadband can do in terms of its ability to affect change, whether you're a small business owner, whether you're in the ag sector, healthcare. And so the more we can capture those stories and the more we can execute as quickly as possible, the more we can change Louisiana's trajectory from now and into the future. A critical, another piece that we're very cognizant of are the challenges around covered populations that historically have never worked in this industry, and to really encourage them to build career arcs in this space. That is really important to the governor. It's really important to the legislature. It's really important to our office. And it's in total lockstep and alignment with the federal government in what Undersecretary Cravins will talk about. What does that mean for us? A couple of things. We encouraged a lot of our ISPs, when they applied for our money, to partner with local community colleges. We think we have the best community college system in the country. And so they partnered with community colleges to develop workforce plans, number one. And they all did that. Number two, the governor appropriated over $10 million last year to help start paying for tuition reimbursement for folks that want to pursue a career. And number three, by the end of this year, every community college in Louisiana, and there are campuses in 55 out of the 64 parishes, will offer multiple classes around fiber splicing, trenchless efforts, trenchless digging, et cetera, to help address the workforce shortage that exists currently in Louisiana. And so the ISPs are doing their part, the federal government's doing their part, the states are doing their part to helping address this as tactically as possible. The last thing is this, and before I introduce the Undersecretary, we have this awesome opportunity to not only achieve what we want to achieve when it comes to addressing the digital divide, but do it in probably the most equitable of ways. If you really think about it, this broadband initiative that every state's going to experience over the next 5 years is probably the greatest equivocator in balancing out the needs of people that have never had something with the people and the needs for folks that have historically been underserved. Why? Because I have to certify to the feds that every single unserved, every single underserved, and every single community anchor institution has access to high-speed, affordable, reliable internet. And the reality is, yes, while we want to push fiber as much as we can throughout the state, the reality is there are going to be a significant number of broadband serviceable locations and census blocks where we're going to have to look at alternative technologies. And so with that, we are technology neutral. And because of the challenges that we have in Louisiana in terms of weather and climate, we have to think through a variety of different issues and the solutions to addressing some of those issues. And so, you know, when it comes to wireless connectivity, when it comes to fixed wireless, when it comes to mobility, when we think about ubiquity and when we think about the broadband challenge, we have to address it all through those ways. Before I introduce the Undersecretary, the work that he's doing is critical to the success of us eliminating the digital divide once and for all. We strongly have encouraged participation among minority and disadvantaged businesses to help construct, build, and maintain these networks. From a vendor perspective, from a workforce perspective, and that is really important to us. Why? Because the two biggest, and I'm oversimplifying, the two best ways to grow an economy is what? Increase the size of your workforce and to increase productivity of your workforce. And what all of these broadband investments are going to do is they're going to help build the workforce by expanding the workforce of all the companies that are investing in Louisiana. And look, and we are grateful. Every one of the probably attendees here, from SBC to American Tower to Crown Castle to Vertical Bridge, they've all made substantial investments in Louisiana, and we want to encourage those investments and look forward to having conversations with all of them and others over the next couple of days. But there's an awesome opportunity also to drive productivity per employee. And how you do that is do the kinds of things intentionally to addressing the needs of people, which is through digital skilling and making sure people that are in covered populations, people that have never had a chance to work in these industries, have a chance to work in these industries. I have the distinct pleasure in introducing the Undersecretary. As you're aware, the folks in DC, especially in President Biden's administration, I think from Louisiana's perspective, we're punching above our weight in terms of the folks that we have from Louisiana that are in DC, from Mayor Landrieu, who's now the infrastructure czar, to Shalonda Young, who is the head of OMB, to former Congressman Cedric Richmond, who headed public engagement, who's from New Orleans, to Undersecretary Don Cravins, who's the first Undersecretary to lead minority and business development affairs on behalf of Commerce. We are thrilled and passionate to have someone at his caliber to not only lead that agency, be a first-time leader, but to help work with us and across the country to addressing these issues. He is a major in the Army. He was a former state legislator. He was the head of the Urban League in terms of a lot of the efforts around digital divide. He is a father. He is a family man. And most importantly, he is from Louisiana. And even more importantly, I hear that he cooks a really good boudin. And if you haven't had it, please have it in the next couple of days. With that, Undersecretary, pleasure to introduce you. And of course, welcome to New Orleans once again. And thrilled to have a phenomenal partner in the Undersecretary in helping us achieve the digital divide in Louisiana. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, good morning. Come on, guys. Good morning. It is so good to see you in the greatest state, in the greatest city ever in New Orleans. I mean, maybe that's why you're so quiet. I saw a couple of you last night on Bourbon Street. So good to be with you. Let me thank Veneeth for that warm introduction. So proud of the work that he and our Louisiana team are doing and making sure that the people of Louisiana and all over this great nation are being connected. So I want to thank him. I know my colleague, Alex Johnson, spoke on a panel yesterday. He's also a Georgia, Louisiana boy. We adopted him here. Alex Catfish Johnson, as I think he's known. Want to thank him as well. And I want to obviously thank the Wireless Infrastructure Association for inviting me to be here. I've gotten an opportunity to spend some time with Patrick and his staff behind the stage, and you have an intentional, effective leader of this association, and so I'm just so happy to be working with him and the entire organization, and I'm so thankful that they decided to host this wonderful conference in my home state of Louisiana. So it's good to be home. That humidity feels so natural to me as soon as I got off the plane. I'm here to talk to you today, our nation's broadband infrastructure builders, our operators, our investors, about this historic moment that we find ourselves in as Americans. At the age of 50, I chose to come back into government, to go back into government, because I, like probably many of you in this room, know that this is a different time when you look at the investments that our nation is making and will be making into our own nation. Before I talk about that, I want to just tell you a little bit about the Minority Business Development Agency. It was in the late 1960s and early 1970s when our civil rights leaders, Dr. King and others, were fighting for civil rights, but many of them were also advocating for economic rights. This was a message that was very, very simple, and the message was Black and brown Americans not only desired the right to vote, but they also desired the right to build businesses. And not just any kind of businesses, but successful businesses. But what we knew then, and we know today, is that in order to do so, Americans of color needed opportunities and access that had been denied to them for generations. Whitney Young, the great leader of the National Urban League, once said, "We deserve to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, but in the past we've had no straps and in some cases no boots." Well, those voices made a difference because in 1969, President Nixon created the Minority Business Development Agency. He signed an executive order which created the Office of Minority Business Enterprise, which later became my agency. So it was founded, the agency was founded by both Republicans and Democrats, even back in the 1960s, because even then, President Nixon understood that it was important that minority businesses, people who had been underserved for generations, just needed a chance, equity, to bring themselves up. The problem was it was a temporary agency. The president created it by executive order, and it was never codified into permanent law until 2021, when Republicans and Democrats created the Minority Business Development Agency for the first time. And President Biden signed the act into law in November of 2021. I was honored just in September of last year to be unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate to be its first undersecretary. Now, the Senate doesn't unanimously do a lot of things, and so I was proud to be unanimous in it. I tell my wife it's because I'm such a great guy. That's why they had no choice but to do it. But I think the reason why I was unanimously confirmed was because both sides of the political aisle understood the importance of the moment that we are living in right now and understood the importance of making sure that our minority businesses, 9.7 minority businesses in America, have an agency that is providing technical resources to them and business support services. And so the Act does really three things. One, it made it a permanent agency, which I talked about, and it gave us an undersecretary role. Secondly, the Act gives MBDA more resources so we can reach out to more communities across America and provide technical resources. Third, the Act gives us the authority to operate at a systemic level, a high intentional level, guiding federal policy and breaking down barriers for small and minority-owned businesses. So, ladies and gentlemen, finally, the Minority Business Development Agency has a seat at the commerce table, at the big commerce table, not the kiddie table, and not at a folding chair. We're driving the conversation on equity. We're setting the menu. And so this influence, this is what we've been waiting for at the Minority Business Development Agency. People of color who have been in the business sector for generations, this is what we've been waiting for, a seat at the American entrepreneurial table. Now, the backbone of the MBDA is our national network of 88 business centers that are located in 36 states, including Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia. We also have 3 centers here in Louisiana, one at Southern University and a Louisiana Business Center at Southern University, an entrepreneurial program at Southern University for students, as well as a women's business center here in New Orleans. Our centers, as I said, are designed to create diverse suppliers for many of you. Our centers are designed to help build businesses, whether it be small business or mid-sized businesses, because minority doesn't equal small and shouldn't. And that's where we meet. We meet these businesses so that we can provide businesses the tools and resources they need to grow so that they can do business with you. And they can help you build the infrastructure that you all are working on. That's our focus. And we get results. Just last year, our centers and programs helped businesses secure over $1 billion in capital, $1.7 billion in contracts, and over $200 million in exporting. We export as well. So I'm proud to say, ladies and gentlemen, that we're working hard and we're getting it done. And what we know is that when minority businesses do well in this country, all businesses do well in this country. This is a we're in it together kind of game. Since assuming this role as Undersecretary, we've invested $10 million in our network. We've opened 6 new business centers in Arkansas, Utah, Wisconsin, Oregon, Illinois, and South Carolina. We've launched, as I mentioned, 11 minority-serving institution programs. And so those of you who want access into HBCUs or Hispanic-serving institutions, we're in those universities as well, preparing the next generation of entrepreneurs. We've launched innovative access to capital grant programs in order to open non-traditional lines of credit and capital for our minority business owners. As you know, small business owners of all makes and models say access to capital is the #1 issue. We're working very, very hard and strategically with our private sector partners, our banks, as well as our non-traditional lenders to find better ways, more ways, so that small businesses and minority businesses can get the funding they need. And then last year, we awarded 26 grants to existing business centers so they could hire a procurement specialist. Because our centers, like you all, realize that we are now at a time in our nation's history where we will need to work with people and get them ready to do procurement with the government, as well as supplier diversity and procurement with our major corporations in this country. So we are, again, meeting these businesses where they are to help make them better candidates to do business with you, or to do more work with the federal government or the state government to help Veneeth and all of the folks rolling out infrastructure on a state level. And then finally, in December of this past year, and I've only been in the job for 9 months, I'm bragging a little bit, but finally, in December of last year, we launched the largest technical assistance program in the Department of Commerce's history and certainly in MBDA's history. We launched a program called the Capital Readiness Program. It's a $100 million grant program designed to grow our network by incentivizing incubators and accelerators located across this country to also work with minority-owned and socially and economically disadvantaged businesses as well. And so we are building our network because, ladies and gentlemen, we want to get rid of the reason and maybe even the excuse for some that they can't find minority businesses to do business with, or the federal government can't find minority businesses to do certain things for the government. We want to eliminate that because we know they're out there, and we need to help them get to where they need to be so they can be attractive to you all. MBDA's bold, rapid transformation as a government leader is a perfect example of the president's vision for America. The vision to create a more equitable ecosystem so we can unlock our nation's true potential. We're doing that by investing in our infrastructure, in our microchip industry, our climate resiliency, jobs, businesses, and in communities. We're doing that by investing in broadband, $65 billion to give every American access to the internet. And that's what we're really talking about. I know that's what you all are going to be talking about this week. Reliable, fast, affordable internet for all. Because as you know, ladies and gentlemen, there was a time, decades after Thomas Edison sparked the first light bulb, where electricity was still not universally accessible or affordable. By 1930, only 1 in 10 rural farms had electricity, compared to nearly 9 in 10 urban homes. And so in 1935, in order to solve that problem, President Franklin Roosevelt created the Rural Electrification Administration. And they did so with intention. There was a problem that needed to be fixed, and the president and Congress worked to fix it. They worked with farm co-ops, communities, and they implemented an electric infrastructure, and they did it effectively and efficiently. It worked. By 1955, nearly 100% of Americans had electricity, both urban and rural. And as FDR put it, we were electrified. Now fast forward to today. We don't think of electricity as a privilege, but as a basic right, as a necessity to function and thrive in America. Well, in 21st century society, broadband access should be viewed in the same value. It is essential. Internet access is essential. But unfortunately, still for many, 500,000 Louisianians, nearly 20 million Americans, internet is not easily accessible. And that's just not right. It's not okay. Not for the wealthiest nation in the world. A restaurant in Ville Platte, Louisiana should not be forced to operate on a cash-only basis because their internet can't handle credit card transactions. And a Tunica, Biloxi tribe member trying to run a business from their laptop should not have to hope and pray that an urgent email is going to make its way out that day. A sixth grader in Franklinton, Louisiana, should not have missed out on her algebra class during COVID because her Wi-Fi wasn't reliable enough to handle a Zoom call. We must make those struggles a thing of the past, ladies and gentlemen, and I know that is what you're committed to doing, and that's why you're here this week. You're on the front lines of making it happen. Because just as we electrified rural America, the only way we can implement internet for all is with intention, with an equity focus, with an equity lens. We hear that word thrown around a lot lately. We hear some people even trying to vilify the word. But what does equity really mean? What does it really mean? We have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that everybody doesn't come from the same place or from the same space. Some people don't have more obstacles. It's just a fact of life than others. They have a tougher path. Investing with equity just simply means that we're going to create a society capable of providing support unique to each person's needs. Some of you have heard before that equality is giving everyone a pair of shoes. Equity is giving everyone a pair of shoes that fits. And that's what I'm asking you all as you do your work, as the federal government does its work, to have that lens in mind. If we're going to implement broadband build out equitably, we have to invest in communities where they are. We need to consult the families. We need to consult the businesses. We need to consult the neighborhoods. We have to talk to the tribal members. We have to make sure we talk to the people who are set to benefit the most from these investments. We cannot leave Americans out of the process. Not like the infrastructure projects of the past, where we did not invest with an equity lens. Because we know when that happens, people are left out. I'm proud to see that the bipartisan infrastructure plan, the act itself, it's different. This is different. The programs are being implemented with intention, and they're being implemented with a focus on equity. The law states explicitly that state officials must invest equitably. They must prove They will meaningfully engage in all communities before they install a fiber optic line or erect a wireless tower. And not only must states consider how, they must also consider the who. Who has an opportunity to participate in this infrastructure? Officials must engage with rural communities, rural telecom companies, mid-sized business owners, minority-owned businesses, and give them an opportunity to do this work as well. Because Americans of color don't just want to access internet, we want to help build the internet. Americans of color don't want to just ride on nice roads and bridges. We want to work on the nice roads and bridges. We want to construct the wireless towers. We want to plant the seeds and reap the benefits and the fruits as well. And that is where the Minority Business Development Agency is here and why we come in and why we want to partner with all of you. It's our mission to ensure that our minority and our small businesses can participate, to give them the tools they need so they can be prepared to work with you all and to participate in this investment. My final message to you all is this. MBDA is here to help. We're here to help you get the job done. We have a proven track record as the go-to resource for minority-owned businesses in this country and for those businesses who are looking to partner with those businesses. We understand the individual needs of businesses and the communities they come from, and we understand the local markets and the industries. And not only can we provide the connections, but we're mandated to operate as a convener across the federal agencies. And so we have an obligation not only to help the businesses, not only to help the government, but to also help our private sector as well. So let us be that resource for you, ladies and gentlemen. Let us be that convener. Let us be that person who can help you fill in those gaps. This is a bold mission. We have a very tough job ahead of us, but the good news is the investment has been made. The dollars are there. It's not going to be easy, but we have to get the job done. Our generations are depending on us to do it. Our children, our grandchildren are depending on it. Every business that wants to succeed in this country, let's provide them with the boots and straps they need to survive, to pull themselves up. Every neighborhood deserves good roads and bridges built with intention. Every family deserves internet access. And every American deserves a pair of shoes that fits. That's what we're working on at MBDA. Thank you so much for all your leadership, all your hard work, and we are looking forward to working with you all to get the job done and to get it done right. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your conference.